Hello, everyone. I'm Brandon,
And I'm Mom.
and welcome back here to Tansson Talks TV. We are so excited to have you all here today.
Yep, we are so happy to have you.
Yeah, so first of all, how are you doing today, Mom?
I am doing fine on a Monday afternoon. I am doing fine.
That is good to hear.
Yeah, and how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thank you for asking. I'm very excited for us to go ahead and head on over to our discussion for today.
All right, I'm ready.
Cool. So, what show will we be watching today?
All right, well, the box comes back again, Brandon. As we told people earlier, we watched certain shows this month, so we're going to pick to see which one we do next. So, look like we're going to do Quantum Leap. And Brand, for the audience, let me clarify, it is the older Quantum Leap.
Yes, this is the one from 1989.
Yes. And let me get my notes out.
Cool. Well, as you are getting the notes out, as per usual, we like to tell everyone, what we know about the show. And so I'll let you speak in a moment about what you know. But for me, I've seen bits and pieces of the original one, probably just like of the first couple episodes, but I don't remember any, really any of it. And of course, I've seen all of the 2022 to present revival.
Mm-hmm. And I watched all of it when it came out. Now I remember certain episodes, but when it came out, I did watch it live at that time period.
That makes sense. And so are you ready for us to go ahead and dive right on into this?
We sure am. And once more, we are doing the pilot episode for this one, or the first episode. And the original aired in 1989. And there are two main characters in this particular show. There is a gentleman named Sam Beckett, and then we have Al without a last name. And these two characters, of course, are in, as far as I know, every episode of Quantum Leap. And so the scene begins for the first one. And first of all, let me say, Quantum Leap is an hour show, and that there were really two episodes that kind of are together, and we're going to discuss them both at the same time because one kind of leads right into the other. But it begins with Al. He is actually out, and he meets a young woman, and they are driving together, and they kind of look up at the sky, and they kind of notice something a little different about the sky. And then all of a sudden, he realizes that he says that Sam is kind of leaping out of without control, or he says something like that. Um, then he gets a call from a strange person and talks about Sam and leaping. Now we don't know what any of that means at that point. That's just what happens, and I don't believe we see this girl again either. This is just the lead in to this. And then in the next particular scene, we see who we later find out is Sam, and he's waking up, and he doesn't quite know where he is, but he's very aware, and he kind of says, "We did it." And then, but he can't remember anything, and he wonders where he is. And then, of course, he doesn't recognize as he's waking up. There's this woman with him, as a pregnant woman, and he doesn't quite know who she is either. And then at some point in time, he looks at himself in the mirror, and he sees that it is not himself. He is someone else. And we later find out that he leaps into, meaning that he is now taking the body presence, I should say, of a gentleman named Tom Stratton. And the time period is September 13th of 1956. And so we find out that Sam, aka Tom, is a father with a son, he has a pregnant wife. He's in the military, particularly he's in the Air Force, and he's a pilot. And he's good friends with this gentleman named the captain named Bulldog. That's his particular best friend. And I guess it's just important to know that we're acknowledging that he does have a friend in this particular episode that he's with all the time. Um, at some point in time, Al appears. However, Sam acknowledges him, but he doesn't quite speak to him. And then, but then, but they just kind of look at each other. Then we're kind of off to a next scene where Al does have some time. I'm not Al, but Sam does have some time with his wife. He's really confused. He doesn't quite know what's going on. His wife doesn't. His wife just, of course, assumes that this is her husband, and so they're continuing to have conversations. And we find out that, and then he does go to work. Sam does go to work later, and he talks, and while he's at work and they're talking about piloting, and they're talking about a little bit about flying, and the men talk about memory loss while flying if going a certain speed. And so we later find out really the episode is about these gentlemen going on flights that are going very fast and these Mach speeds. um, and then let's see. And then at some point in time, Sam goes out with his friends, with his quote unquote friends, and his wife, and he sees Al again. Um, of course, no one else can see Al, and so it looks like Sam is talking to himself. And so I think it was his wife. Someone made a comment to him in regards to him kind of talking to himself. So he kind of goes off a little later to speak to Al. He tells him that Sam tells Al that he doesn't remember Al, um, but he's speaking to him because there is no one else who, at this point in time, he can kind of tell this to. And he says that when he woke up originally, that he only remembered his name and his phone number, and that he remembered someone named Ziggy. He just said he's a short guy with bad breath, and that's what he tells Al. Um, in the meantime, after he has a conversation with Al, um, when Sam goes home with his wife from leaving this, I think it's a bar, he tells Peggy, the wife per se, everything. And he explains why things are kind of confusing for him. And of course, she doesn't quite know what to believe at that point. He does remember, he meaning Sam, does remember that he lived on a dairy farm in Indiana, and that he had a sister who married a naval officer, and who lives in Hawaii with his mom, and he remembers that his dad died in 1974. Um, and then a little later in the episode, Sam takes his quote unquote um, son out in order to go fishing, and how Al appears then. And that's when they start to talk about a little bit of the history of the show, which is kind of really important to know. We learned at that point that Al is a hologram, and they said his last name is restricted. We learned that Ziggy, who they both refer to at some point in time, is a hybrid computer, and that Sam is on a time travel experiment. And he's technically experiencing technical difficulties. And somewhere along this line, we do find out that Sam is, at this point in time, is only allowed to travel within his lifetime. And we do find out that Al is an ex-astronaut. Um, we find out, and then that particular scene is actually, to me, kind of sets up and gives the background, what we need to learn about Sam and about Al. But then it comes down to what is the purpose for him actually going into these different people. And so he needs to figure that out in order to leap out of this particular body, per se, into another person, or to go back to himself. And so we find out later that Ziggy, the hybrid computer, kind of gives them some information about this Mach 3. Apparently, it has to do with speed and how fast you could fly an airplane. And at that time, in real history, it had not been done. The Mach, going to Mach 3. And so they talk about how Sam is supposed to actually fly this airplane and survive this Mach 3 time, Mach 3 speed and traveling. And so Al tells him what he needs to do. And Al basically tells him that he needs to actually figure out how to jump out of the plane, in order to survive this particular crash. Because Ziggy originally said, the hybrid computer mentions that that Tom was originally supposed to die after, when he did this. And so Sam has got to figure out how to make Tom live, in essence. And so they do the flight, and Sam is able to somehow he survives the plane because he is able to leave the plane, meaning that he he kind of parachuted out of the plane, and then but he didn't leap at that time, which is what he thought he was going to do. And but his wife kind of had a little bit of a premonition, and she went into premature labor. And so when Sam went to the hospital, the doctors did not think that Peggy would survive because she was, I believe, 6 months or something like that pregnant. And so Sam provided advice to the doctors on how to stop the labor. And they really didn't believe him because he was kind of saying some different things at the time. And some of the medicines that Sam was thinking about did not actually, at that time, they didn't know about it in order to stop premature labor. So they did listen to his explanation and they stopped the labor. And then they did say later that he had a daughter, but at that time he kind of leaped, and so it looked like his purpose was really to stop his wife from having the baby early. And so that's how it kind of ended. And it's a lot of information in this one particular episode. But then we find that Sam leaps again, I guess to show the continuation that he's leaping. And so he leaps into a baseball player. And now I didn't write down, Brand. Maybe you got it. The year of the baseball. I think this is in 1968ish, I believe. Um, but then he leaps into this baseball player, and we notice that a dog recognizes him, meaning the dog realizes that he is not the true person that he's supposed to be, which kind of leads again to know that a little evidence that there are other that a dog or maybe an animal will recognize that it is not the real person. But anyway, so Sam speaks to Al again. Al gives him some history and tells him that the particular person that he kind of leaped into, I believe, was a man named Tim Fox, and he was 32 years old, and he was going to break his leg while sliding into second base. And so the important thing about this particular episode, even though Sam's job was to actually to kind of stop him from breaking his leg, we believe, Sam actually calls his father. And because at that time his father would have still been alive in 1968. And so he has a long conversation with his father. He doesn't say he's Sam. He says he's someone else, and but a relative, and then he has a long conversation with his dad. But at the same time, they cut to a scene of Sam originally in 1968 as a young boy. For the episode itself, Sam does end up helping the baseball player. He kind of gets a he doesn't get a home run, but he because he strikes out, but he's able to go to all the bases. And so, and that's how he helps this particular young man to kind of move on um, to I guess his career doesn't end like it originally was going to that day. So that's a lot of talk, Brandon.
Well, nevertheless, thank you so much for letting us know the very concise details of this very long episode.
Yes, it was a 2 hours. So yes.
Yes, yes. So for anyone who is watching, like we said, this episode that which I believe actually is a pilot episode. It was called Genesis, but it got even though it was originally a 2 hour episode, it was later split into two episodes, episode 1 and 2. And so, of course, like we said, we mentioned that we watched both. So that was the summary of both. And it definitely was quite an episode.
It was quite an episode. And I liked how they explained the history in the episode because it was needed. I mean, even though we watched two episodes, even though I may have babbled quite a bit, it did not seem that the episode was as long. I think we felt it go by pretty quickly.
Yeah, I think once you got maybe like a bit into the first episode, like the first part of the episode in part one, I feel like the rest of it just sort of continued forward. And so, yeah, I mean, it was overall wasn't a very interesting episode. And so I like, I guess, to evaluate some things I noticed is at the beginning of the first episode, and even during the little cutscenes, is that we just have like, I guess, really like amazing shots of different things, like regarding like, time and like the sky for where Al was at the very beginning, and like good shots all around.
Yep, they did. They did a really good job, and I thought they did a good job as you're speaking in regards to kind of setting the time period where you felt like you were in that particular time period that the event was occurring.
Yeah, definitely. And I will note too that throughout this two-parter episode, or however you would like to describe it, is that yeah, some of the cutscenes, while I don't know for sure if they were actually from that time, they at least did their work to make it appear like that. Like where some of the cutscenes had the different breaks in it that would, in my guess, be similar to how the videos would look like at that time.
Hmm. That is very true.
Yeah, and having done a little bit of research, apparently part one of this episode, Genesis Part One, actually received a Emmy Award for outstanding cinematography. So I guess they did something right there.
Yeah, I think so.
But yeah, so yeah, but that's certainly interesting. And even going back over, my own notes, it the first part of it just seems so interesting in how it's all conveyed, and it's like we truly do get to see a glimpse as to what Sam is dealing with, and him trying to piece together his own identity, the identity of the person he assumed, and everything in between.
Yes, yes, that's true. And one of the things I liked, Brandon, it was regards to the history of it for both of the episodes. I mean, for both of them, because it made us look things up. I mean, like I said, we talked about the Mach 3. I had no idea, and I didn't realize how true to life some of it was. The original Tom, or I can't remember what the gentleman's real name was, did not live through the Mark III, but I liked that they kept the timing of it, and it made me, like you said, it made me look it up. And the same with the baseball one episode. Um, we were kind of shocked a little bit about how you could strike out but still run. And so we both had to look up to see, oh, that is a real rule. We didn't know about that.
Yeah, definitely the history is there, and it definitely provides some really great insights into research, and it really makes me curious for those both this version and the revival, like how I guess some of the research is done, because a lot of times, like we mentioned, like wherever Sam will leap into is very similar or adjacent to, like we said, like a real life scenario. And so I wonder how much of it was truly like, okay, we need to go put him somewhere, let's go find a spot, and how much of it was, research and trying to reinvent a story. But it nevertheless just brings some really intriguing plot. And I like how, Al within this double episode, so to speak, is able to sort of explain to Sam just how in the world all of this works. Where Sam's able to understand it because apparently he has numerous PhDs, as they mention. But yeah, for us, we know enough that okay, that makes sense. But we don't know the real logistics of it. But we know enough to get through the episode and through the series.
Yes, yeah, very true.
But yeah, but is there anything that you would like to note about, about this overall episode?
Well, like I said, it was just kind of fun to go back, especially after watching the newer version. It was fun to go back just to see the original and see how did the original actually start, and to kind of see a little bit is like how quickly could they bring the characters around, only having two and having someone not have a memory. How could you explain the characters? And so it was, they did. I thought they did a really nice job of doing that for this particular episode.
Yeah, and for me, as someone who is very familiar with the new one and not as much as the original, I have definitely seen some things where I have to think it's like, was this an intentional connection, as in the new one to the original, or is this just pure? for the matter of the story, for this type of story, you're going to have this type of plot. And so it definitely had a lot of spots that made me think.
Yes, it did. It did. And Bram, what did you think of the technology in the episode?
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting, especially with the little sort of handheld computer or whatever that Al has to find the information from Ziggy. Definitely is reminiscent of like our modern day smartphones in a sense,
Yes,
of how compact it is.
yes. And would you have watched this show at that time period? I kind of established that I watched it. If you, during that time period, would you have watched this?
I definitely think so. I mean, even though I'm not as much into dramas and sci-fi, so to speak, I mean, I definitely think I would have watched it. May not be, the day of, but I think I definitely would have put in the effort to at least try to keep up with it as much as I can.
Great.
But yeah, but even though this is a drama show, we did have a theme song in it. So what were your thoughts about the theme song?
I like the theme song. I give it a 7. Even though there aren't words, it is a very catchy little tune, and I like how they kind of incorporated the scenes in it. So yes, I would give it a 7.
Yeah, and I definitely really did like it, although in my mind it caught me a little bit, off guard in the sense that a lot of times for theme songs, while they will be like a minute or so in length, because you typically have a lot of stars in it,
Mhm.
most of it is detailing them, but since there's really only two main consistent actors, whole first half of the theme song is really just a whole bunch of scenes from future episodes before
Yes,
you actually get to them actually announcing the two actors.
yes, very true, very true. But either way, it's still a little catchy little catchy little song.
But yeah, it's catchy and it's fun, and I mean, it helps summarize the episodes pretty well too, and give us a little insight as to what's next.
Yes, it does.
But yeah, but is there anything else that you would like to mention for this episode?
No, I think you've hit upon the parts here. I think, like I said, this for this particular show, it really was just a history and explaining why. And then I think in future episodes of the show, it's probably a little easier to go into more depth about theme and different things like that. For this one, it just needed to lay the groundwork.
That's quite true. And to answer your question, you are correct in that it was the summer of 1968 for the
Mhm.
baseball part.
Okay, cool. Good to know.
But yeah, so overall, I think this was a pretty, fun episode to dive into. And yeah, I definitely would be interested in checking out some more of the episodes that thankfully are only, 1 hour in length and not two. But,
Yes.
but I would be excited to watch a few more, especially as we're waiting for, the new episodes of the revival to come out in just a couple weeks.
Yep, nope, sounds good.
Well, yeah. Well, thank you all so much for tuning in, and we always appreciate your support.
All right, yes. And if you have any other shows that you'd like for us to watch, like we always say, put them in the comments below. We're more than happy to take a look at some of them.
Yeah, we absolutely will. And also be sure to watch these episodes with us so that way you can participate in the discussion down in our comments.
Oh, yep, that'd be great.
But yeah, but until next time, have a wonderful day, everyone, and we can't wait to see you all next week.
All right, have a great day. Bye bye.
Bye bye.